Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us here today. We'll get started in about 1 minute. Thank you. All right, guys, y'all ready to get going? All right. Well, good afternoon now, everybody. It's afternoon in the Central Time Zone as of just now. So welcome to Gardening in the Panhandle live on October the 15th. Today we're going to talk about cool season vegetable gardening mostly, but cool season gardening in general. And today we've got a really good lineup for y'all. We've got Mary Salinas and Matt Lollar, both of Santa Rosa County. Larry Williams of Okaloosa County. As always, we have Julie McConnell, our producer, backstage from Bay County. And today, moderating the chat, we have Dr. Pat Williams from Wakulla County. So if you have any questions, he will be looking for those in the chat and also posting some links. And we have Mr. Matt Orwatt from Washington County over there in Chipley. I think all the water's drained away and he now has dry feet, so that's good. We'll go ahead and get started. Thanks everybody for being here today. How are y'all doing? My panelists, that is.
I'm good.
Doing good.
Yes, doing well. It's a beautiful day.
Awesome. Mary is always sunshiny. Let's get started, Mary, with you. So the basic question here, we'll go ahead and get out of the way first. When is the best time to plant our cool season garden? This is a question that several Zoom listeners have asked.
Well, right now is a great time to plant that cool season garden. Actually starting in about, sometime late August to September through October is a good time for that. And some of the things that you can plant are anything in the cabbage family. You have your broccoli, your head cabbage, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, and then some kind of new varieties like broccolini. And if you look online at some of the seed catalogs, there are all kinds of great new options for some of those crops. And then, of course, it's a good time to plant your greens in this cooler weather. So any kind of greens like arugula. There's so many kinds of lettuces, kale, spinach. All those will do better now that it's going to be a little bit cooler. You have onions, turnips, beets, carrots, celery, radishes. All those will do well. And I do want to direct you to the Florida Vegetable Gardening Guide. If you don't have that already, that is one of our most popular publications here at University of Florida. And I think the guys are going to put that in the chat and a link to that so that you can get that publication. It has several tables in the back, and one talks about when to plant the different crops in North, Central, and South Florida. So look under that column for North Florida and follow that guide. There's all kinds of great information in that too on some of the different varieties of those crops that you can find and that will do well in Florida.
For sure. That's an excellent publication. And you can keep all of the kale that you grow for yourself and you don't have to share anything. Unless it's super baby kale. I don't want any big kale.
Well, that's how I like it too. I like it real small and tender, good to throw in a salad.
Yeah, kale gets a little much for me pretty quick.
But it's also beautiful.
It is a pretty plant.
Some of the kale is just gorgeous and very highly ornamental. And
especially those lacinato types are pretty.
I'm sorry?
Those lacinato, like the dinosaur types, are beautiful.
Yeah, so you can add those to your regular landscape bed.
Yeah,
So,
for
okay,
sure.
yeah.
So Larry, kind of going off of that, another Zoom listener wants to know, how do I grow larger potatoes? I assume we're talking about the pink or red new potatoes here. Mine never grow more than 2 inches in diameter, she says, or he says, whoever the person says. How should we address that? How do we get bigger potatoes?
Well, as you know, a number of things, but the starting point is, I think, understanding the difference between cool season and warm season plants. And when you say potatoes, people grow sweet potatoes, which are definitely warm season. They will not tolerate cold weather. They need the longer day length and the warmer temperatures. So again, like you said, I'm assuming we're talking about Irish potatoes, which are cool season, and they like the cooler time of the year. There's some confusion on Irish potatoes as well. Some people will say, well, when I talk to them over the phone, no, I'll mention Irish potatoes, and they'll say, no, I'm talking about spring potatoes and red potatoes, new potatoes. They're all in that same group of Irish potatoes.
Right.
So timing is everything. You want to plant the tubers, the pieces, in late winter to early spring. Now, being cool season, you can plant earlier than that. You can plant in the fall, but you typically get better results in North Florida if you plant during late winter, early spring. But in doing that, you've got to remember, and that's a key. Timing is important. You have to have basically 85 to 110 days between planting the potato pieces and harvest. So you don't want to get too close to hot weather. You have to look at your calendar. If you're going to plant in early spring, you could probably pull off planting based on what the weather does early March through mid-March. I would say about the latest, even though the spring of this year, we had extended cool weather, and I know people that had Irish potatoes growing a little later than normal. So timing's important. Then you want to make sure you're planting the correct varieties that are adapted to warm climates and that have a shorter period of time from planting to maturity. There is a publication on the University of Florida Extension, EDIS, what we call EDIS, EDIS. Right. I think there's a link there. Correct. On growing potatoes in the home garden. It's excellent, and it gives you some of the varieties to consider. I'll mention a few. The Yukon Gold is one, Gold Rush. There's Red Lesotho, which is a standard older variety. There's quite a number of others. There's also some exotic potatoes, some that have not only the skin will be purple, blue, but when you cut into it, it has that same pigmentation inside. Some with yellows and oranges, which are Irish potatoes. You might want to look for some of those for the fun of it, and growing those with kids, with children, with youth, they get excited about that. There's one that is an exotic potato that's called All Blue, ALL, 2 words, and the second word is blue. Look for some of those, but correct variety selection is critical. Have your soil tested. Potatoes prefer a pH of 5 to 6, ideally a slightly acidic soil. They are considered to be heavy feeders. I don't necessarily like that term because fertilizer is technically not plant food. When you think about it as plant food, you have a tendency to overdo it.
Those potatoes aren't out there munching, are they?
That's right. They are heavy feeders. And what this means, if you don't do a soil test and you're kind of guessing, which I again would recommend checking with your local extension office and find out how do I get my soil tested. You want to have adequate potassium level, adequate phosphorus level for these root type crops. But if you don't have that, basically you want to apply 7.5 pounds of a 10-10-10 fertilizer per 100 feet of row at planting, and an additional 7.5 pounds of a 10-10-10 fertilizer. This is per 100 feet of row, banded. That's putting the fertilizer in bands along about 4 to 6 inches to either side of the plant in the row. That would be done, the banding would be done 3 to 4 weeks after planting. So fertilizer is important. You want to maintain moderate soil moisture, not too wet, not too dry. You'll get the potatoes will rot if it stays overly wet. And if you let them dry out too much, they don't develop well. Avoid overwatering. Control competing weeds that can result in the potatoes not doing as well. And then the final thing is to protect your plants during freezes. Even though it is a cool season crop, the tops can get fried during cold weather. So you watch the forecast. If we're looking at freezing temperatures, be prepared to provide some sort of protection just during the time that we're experiencing freezing temperatures. I'm talking about 32 degrees or below. Get yourself some freeze protection fabric. Be ready to cover the plants and remove it as soon as the temperature's warm.
Sounds good to me. That's a pretty comprehensive guide to growing potatoes by Larry Williams there. And do check out that link there in the chat, Growing Potatoes in the Florida Home Garden. Larry, I definitely agree with what you say. I grow mine in raised beds, and they 100% seem to respond really well to pretty good moisture and fertility. Of course, I can't really overwater in a raised bed, but
yeah,
you can do that in the ground though.
Raised bed gardening or even in appropriate containers is an option with potatoes.
Yeah. I may have to try some of those blue potatoes. That sounds interesting. All right, Matt Lollar, we've got a question here that kind of dovetails on what Mary was talking about earlier. She mentioned, late August, September into October, but today's October the 15th. We're on the downhill slope of October. Are we too late to plant lettuce and still get a crop in?
Yeah, I think it just depends on what kind of crop you're expecting. I would recommend, if you are going to just seed outdoors, to build some sort of cold frame. So you could use some, very narrow PVC, maybe like ½ an inch or so, and make a nice hoop with some clear plastic over the top, at least to help those seeds germinate. So lettuce likes nighttime temperatures maybe in the 50s or so, but as far as germination is concerned, it's going to need a little bit warmer and moisture climate. And once it pops up, just depending on the outdoor temperature day to day, you might need to put that cold frame back on. But most likely, will be good for another month or so as far as some of our colder temperatures are concerned. So I say go ahead and try it. You'll at least get some leaves. So,
yeah.
And we always recommend, any of our bunching type lettuce or our leaf lettuces over. You're not going to do well with a head lettuce around.
Yeah, yeah. The only one I've never really had much success with is iceberg.
Yeah,
it's just tough. But everything else does great lettuce wise. So we're not too late to plant, is what you're saying. Good deal. So you can still get those lettuce seeds out. And I guess if you wanted a head start, you could hit up your local garden center and buy some lettuce transplants and set out.
Yeah, and you can always start them indoors and then bring them outdoors.
There you go. All right, thanks, Matt. Kind of on a similar type of topic here, Mary, what kind of greens should we plant now? You went into just kind of broadly over some kind of everything. What kind of specifically leafy greens would you recommend that folks try to set out these days?
Well, I think kind of what we had already talked about, some of the lettuces, arugula, the kales, also collards and mustard greens. Any type of greens will do well right now. They like the cooler weather.
I've started growing in the last few years radicchio. That's been a fun one to do. A relative of chicory. That's a little fun green if somebody wants to try something different. Matt, related to greens, while we're on the greens topic, a lot of us have trouble with these warmer temperatures that we sometimes getting our greens like arugula, lettuce, and other things to bolt. So number one, what is bolting? And number two, how can you kind of slow it down and enhance the season that you can harvest over?
So bolting's mainly going to occur in our leafy vegetables, so either lettuce or some of the different kales and things, and basically it's just the plant going to seed very quickly, so it just kind of bolts up and shoots out its flowering parts. But one way to, well, we can't always control the weather.
Right.
What brings on bolting is if we do get some extreme weather changes. So if we get like a Indian fall or a hot snap, hot snap or whatever you want to call it, a little warm period, then it might trigger some of those crops to put up their seed heads way sooner than they should be. As far as limiting, I think we're pretty safe from getting bolting temperatures now. But let's say if you do have a spring crop of lettuce or some of the different greens, you could put some shade cloth or put them maybe under some partially shaded, maybe some pine trees or something that's going to allow for some filtered light to come through. And that'll kind of delay that bolting from happening. But this time of year, I wouldn't much.
Not a big deal in the cool weather. What are some of the worst ones to bolt? Just kind of off topic here. What are the easiest bolting ones?
I've seen it in a lot of the different leaf lettuces. It just pops up a spike, and I mean, I've still eaten lettuce off of.
For sure, me too.
It's just got a little more oxalic acid in it, so just make sure you check your medications and they don't have any restrictions for that. But
there you go.
Just a little more bitter flavor. Thanks,
Matt. Those are some really good tips. We had a couple of questions while we were talking about potatoes, Larry, that came in the chat. Let's touch on those real quick before we continue. I'll just pose this to the whole group. If you have an opinion on this, you can answer. Gene Hartman asks, my potatoes get a black ring slightly under the skin and it ruins them. What's the disease and what is the cure? Are any of y'all familiar with this condition? So we'll come back.
Gene, you have us stumped.
I have you, Gene, you stumped us. So I'm going to ask these guys to do a little research and we'll get back to that one a little later in the session. So the next one, Matt, I know you're going to touch on nematodes a little bit later, but do you know if nematodes affect potatoes at all?
I would definitely think the root knot nematode would affect potatoes. I don't know about the other species. Gotcha.
So maybe if you're gardening a deep sandy soil daiquiri, you might want to consider growing potatoes in a raised bed if you know you have a nematode issue there, it could affect it. Okay, thank you. While we're here, let's just go down to Clara Mullins. Hey, Clara, how are you? So Clara asked, where's the best place to get frames and hoops? Matt, you mentioned cold frames and row cover and things like that. Should she buy from a garden center, a farm store, a big box store? Where's a good source for those materials?
I mean, more of your mom and pop stores would have that kind of thing. They might have some custom creations.
Okay.
Or you could just go and like I said, get some small diameter PVC pipe with some, couplings that you'll be able to connect to your garden box or whatever you're growing in, or just stake them into the ground and use that as your structure.
Yeah, I made a cold frame last year, and I think I found all of my stuff at the local hardware store here in hardware stores can work for that. Also, Clara had asked about pak choi, and Pat Williams posted a really nice link there to eat us on growing bok choy, which is a similar Asian green, so check that out. And now we're going to continue with our previously scheduled programming here. Some more Zoom questions. And we're going to go to Larry for this one. Larry, for those of us that, are whether we're growing in a raised bed or in the ground, what kind of soil preparation would you recommend for cool season crops? And is it any different from your regular warm season crops?
No, it really isn't, other than maybe timing. You don't want to be too close to putting fresh organic matter into the soil or even fresh material and creating a raised bed that's not well decomposed. So, you want to back up, know your site, have that prepared, pick it out, and your prep should be done, I'd say, at least 6 weeks before planting. More than that if you're using relatively fresh organic matter to work into the soil. It can be different if you're talking about traditional in-ground gardening. If you're starting out with what a lot of people have here in Florida, basically a sandy site, one thing I think can be very discouraging for the new gardener, even if you've gardened elsewhere where there's better soil, you have to have patience. It can take multiple years to really improve a sandy site, and you have to work in unbelievable amounts of organic matter over a period of time. You don't achieve that 1 year. You have to, have a little patience. It's a little quicker with a raised bed. You can do your homework and pick out, some good recipes for different things to mix into a raised bed to create a good growing mix, growing media. But the basics involve knowing the site, having the site picked out early enough, and then you want to end up with a clean, loose, which means well-drained, clean, well-drained, clean, meaning weeds removed, roots from trees and shrubs, removed as best you can, but you end up with a loose, level, clean planting bed. And that publication, by the way, that we have, there's a link on soil preparation and liming for vegetable gardens in Florida, is excellent.
Yeah, I agree. Get a nice, soft, well aerated, well-tilled bed. Excellent start. Thanks, Larry. So this is a question that I'm actually going to answer. This is from a Zoom listener. Do the local stores, for example, Home Depot, others offer veggie plants that are specialized for Florida gardening, or where should I go to find out? So we've touched on this kind of before, in that our cool season vegetables are plants that are grown around the United States. They're not necessarily specific to Florida, but living in the deep South, we're able to grow them in the wintertime. So in that sense, the plants that are stocked in garden centers like Home Depot, Lowe's, and independent garden centers are specific to us this time of the year. So yes, when you go to, I was at Lowe's the other day, and it had, a similar, the Bonnie plants display, and they had all the correct things out, the leafy vegetables, the brassicas, the cabbage, greens, the broccoli, all that stuff. Is it necessarily super specialized for Florida gardening? No, but yes, the things that they have this time of the year seasonally are correct for our climate. I will say, if you want to get a little more adventurous, just sort of standard varieties, you will need to order your own transplants off the internet or from a seed catalog, or order your own seeds. So with that having been handled, our next order of business, Matt Lollar, tell us about pigeon pea seedlings. I'm not even 100% sure what that is. And can they be successfully planted in the fall here in the Panhandle? Please enlighten all of us.
Okay. So pigeon peas grow on a small tree. So it would be considered a perennial pea crop.
Okay.
And they're not going to be able to handle our winters. So I guess if you had some sort of structure, I mean, it would be bigger than just a general cold frame, because the trees are going to get 6 feet tall or so. So you'd need a high tunnel or some sort of covered structure for that plant to be in order to make it through our typical winters.
Okay.
As far as planting and starting a transplant, I would keep it indoors until spring and then move it out into the yard, and then
Interesting.
a plan for covering it in the wintertime here.
Okay.
But
Sounds like a unique crop.
Oh yeah, they're wonderful little peas. They do well mixed in rice and all sorts of different Latin dishes.
There you go. Very good. So we are now going to do kind of a roundtable thing here on what are our favorite cool weather plants and why. Let's do that. So let's go through and start with Mary. Tell us, Mary has an interesting selection here. So Mary, what your favorite plant to grow in the cool season is?
Well, I always wait for cool weather so that I could plant cilantro. My husband and I love to make guacamole, and it just makes it so special when you have fresh cilantro in it. So that's one of my favorite things to grow in the winter. You know, a lot of times you will see it for sale in the spring with the other herbs at your local store, and it'll do fine for a while, but it does bolt when the hot weather comes, and
Okay.
then it's gone.
Excellent. We would know Mary would have an interesting answer to that. Larry, tell us what's your favorite cool season veggie to grow?
I think one that's a little bit of a challenge. Some people don't know that we can grow the bulbing sweet onions here, but we can. Timing again is critical. You have to go with the short day varieties, and which basically means Granix or Granix type. There's a number of different ones to look for. There's Texas Grano, Tropical, Tropicana Red. It's important to, if you're wasting your time, if you get the sets in the ground after January, they literally have to have experienced the short days in order to form the bulbs. Gotcha. And so you're planting October through, I would say mid-December is the ideal time, and you're not harvesting until about April, May. So there's a long period there, but you can grow, done correctly, you can grow bulbing sweet onions that will rival the Vidalia onions of Georgia. So,
but we can't call our sweet onions Vidalia, even though they're the same variety, right?
That was a marketing ploy. I'm from Georgia originally.
I knew you would know if you're from Georgia.
They did that was a smart marketing ploy. But anyway, done correctly, planting the right varieties at the right time,
gotcha.
You can have bulbing onions, sweet onions that are baseball, maybe softball size.
Okay. So you can, this just annoys me. You can grow Grand X onions, the same sort of varieties, but if you're not in the Vidalia area, they are not Vidalia onions.
That's correct.
Okay. So there was a question in the chat about that from Gene Hartman. So Gene, hopefully that answers your question. So the long day onions, y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, but they don't work here because they require those long days, and we have to grow onions here mostly in the cooler weather months. And so the times that we have the long days, the onions just don't grow well. Am I correct in my explanation there?
Yes, and even like I said, if you get them in the ground after about January, they're not going to form any size at all. Right. They have to go in about October, mid-October through mid-December is a good time frame.
For sure. So when you're ordering onions or buying at the store, look for the short day onions like Larry mentioned for sure for best success. While I'm looking in the chat here, we've got a question from Daiquiri Champion. Matt Lollar, I'm going to give this one to you. So we've got several questions actually. When's the best time to start snap peas, Asian snaps, green peas, English peas, all those little cool season legumes?
I'd say now through November be a good time.
So before we get into some heavy frost while they have some time to grow. Okay, very good. So hopefully that answered your question, Daiquiri. And so let's get back. Matt, we didn't ask you about your favorite cool weather plant before we move on.
Oh, I just went with the basic broccoli. So
okay.
I mean, I love eating broccoli. I eat it almost every night.
Oh man, yes.
A lot of people have had success with the cutting broccoli. So they might say like miniature broccoli or something on the package, or cutting broccoli.
I like those. Yeah,
there's a number that are available, and they just keep putting up little broccoli sprouts. So.
Yeah, it's a little more efficient for your time than just the one big cut and then you're kind of done. So
yeah,
I like that.
I eat the broccoli leaves too, so you can cook those just like
really
anything. Yeah.
You would cook them like any other brassica leaf?
Yeah, and then the harder portion of the stem, I just peel that and use it for soups and things. Just chop it up and blend it. So.
There is
or broccoli slaw.
Yeah, that would be good too.
There is no waste in the Lollar household. I love it.
No.
Very good. Matt, we're going to stick with you for a second. So what can we plant as part of a winter garden that will survive and produce for us even through our frost and our cold days in January, February?
So the link that will be posted is for Brussels sprouts. That was my my best option for that. I know they like some cold weather snaps just to get them to produce their little buds that are on that stem. So
Yeah,
that was a recommendation there.
okay. And there you go, Daiquiri. He indirectly answered your question there also. So good deal. So Brussels sprouts. And finally, we teased root knot nematodes earlier. And while we've got Matt Lollar's churning here, we're going to hit him up for this. Matt, what cool weather vegetables can tolerate root knot nematodes should we have that issue?
So I was going to recommend any of our greens. So especially like our mustard greens, and you'll even see on some of the naturally derived nematode products, some of them will have some sort of mustard or sulfur in the ingredient list. So I would say any of our mustards or some of our different greens would be best for that. That doesn't mean that all the nematodes will just go away. So they might not be attracted to those particular plants, but they'll still hang out and be ready to come after whatever you plant after that. So
there you go.
There are some different cover crops that you might use in the summer to help try to deter some of those nematode populations. One that comes to mind is sun hemp. So if you are trying to do some sort of rotation with the garden with some unedible crops that might be beneficial to your soil, that would be one that I would recommend for the summertime.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Larry, before we kind of shift gears out of vegetable gardening, I want to touch on this question from Daiquiri here in the chat. So she says, if we have a very mild winter, can you help the plant with its cold needs by placing ice on the soil? Have you heard of that? What would your thoughts be?
Good gracious, that's going to,
I guess like insulating it maybe with ice?
somebody, I mean, if it's a mild winter, the ice is going to melt. So we do have this roller coaster of temperatures. There's no doubt about it. Almost every year. And that's, by the way, there's a couple of vegetables we have a very difficult time growing quality vegetables. Asparagus is one. We can do that, but they don't get the, they like to go dormant. They like to, have the cold weather and stay consistently cold through the entirety of winter. We don't have that here. So there's just a couple of vegetables we can't really grow because of that like a true winter.
Yeah.
But I don't know of anything. I would hate to think I'd have to routinely take ice out to the garden. I mean, that's pretty desperate.
Yeah.
And it doesn't.
That's too much work for me.
There are microclimates within a landscape, so if you can find those cooler spots, it might make a little bit of a difference.
Okay.
But I don't know about having success with routinely taking ice to manipulate the temperature, in a vegetable.
Yeah. And I mean, we experienced warm conditions relatively over the last couple of years, and I've not, noticed any major impacts on the garden yet. So I agree with Larry, probably not necessary. And if that comes to pass, we may find ourselves moving north. so we can do that. All right, we've got a couple more Facebook questions from Facebook. Yeah, so Daiquiri, you're correct. They do sometimes ice azaleas for the golf tournament in Georgia, but there is the level of care at Augusta National and the level of care in Daniel's raised beds are two totally different things.
Yeah, Daniel, I get the same thing with this Walt Disney World syndrome.
Yeah.
People go to Epcot or someplace like that, and they don't see the army of people that come out at night, literally, to maintain those gardens. So it's somewhat unfair to compare the golf course like that in Augusta or Disney World to your own home landscape.
Gotcha. So Matt Lollar, I keep saying before we leave vegetables, this is the last vegetable gardening question. Matt Orwatt, do not give me another one from Facebook. No, I'm just kidding. We appreciate y'all's questions, but here we go. So Matt Lollar, which winter vegetables need frost protection? You hear about, sometimes a frost will make these things sweeter, quote unquote sweeter. Is that true? So do vegetables need frost?
So we will hit more on some frost protection in the next few questions. I mean, I would go ahead and have some sort of structure set up for any of my vegetables just to be on the safe side. Or, I think most home gardeners are going to have a mixture of species in one bed or one row anyway. So
Gotcha.
I don't want to say that anything doesn't need frost protection.
Okay, gotcha. A lot of these things can take cold pretty well, but yeah, you're absolutely correct. All right, so we're going to move on a little bit here from vegetable gardening and kind of shift gears into just some different things related to gardening in the cool weather. I'm going to go to Mary Salinas here. Mary may want to plant some perennials and trees because due to some Hurricane Sally impacts on her yards, this may be timely for her. Mary, is this the best time to plant perennials and trees? And if not, when is?
Well, a lot of times we plant perennials when they're available. And, you know, perennials is a big, big topic, and it encompasses a lot of different types of perennials. And, you know, you have your bulbs, you have your kind of woody plants, you have your herbaceous perennials. And, you know, some of them will die down in the winter, but always come back in the spring. Some, you know, stay green all winter. So it just depends on what you're talking about. But generally with perennials, you know, when they're available at your local nurseries or, you know, online, you can plant them pretty much anytime. The biggest thing with perennials is you want to make sure that they are well watered when you plant them. You know, you put the right plant in the right place. Right. So it all depends on the perennial that you are choosing. So you want to look that up. I think we're going to put a link in the chat to an IFAS document on gardening with perennials in Florida, and it has a lot of good information. Oh, yes, and there's a...
I know you like this one. This is a good one.
Yes, and I have that book too, Daniel, you know. A book written by Sydney Park Brown, one of our retired extension specialists.
Friend of the show, Sydney Park Brown.
Yeah. So that has a lot of great information in it, and it's available at the IFAS bookstore. Or I think you probably can get it on Amazon or Walmart. Gotcha. I think you also mentioned trees.
Yeah, how about trees and shrubs?
So, you know, this is coming, you know, we're coming into a good time for planting trees and shrubs because it's a little bit cooler, and so the water needs of those plants are going to be less. Generally, generally the cooler weather is the best time to plant. Nationally, Arbor Day, which is when you want to plant trees, is in April, but in Florida, Arbor Day is in January. I think it's the third Friday in January, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a good time, you know, January, February, to be planting your trees.
Totally agree. Thank you.
Yes.
And so I'm glad with the perennials that you nuanced it a little bit and didn't just say it depends. You're going to get kicked off of the show. Say it depends. No.
Oh, no, don't fire me.
No, I'm not going to fire you. You're doing a great job. All right, Matt, we've got kind of a two-part question here. So we've touched on freezing and a lot, but we're going to do that as it relates to herbs. So how can we protect our herbs from freezing? And then I want you to just go ahead into, is it okay if we put frost cover out, if that frost cover actually touches the plant foliage? So
okay.
A two-parter.
So for protecting our herbs, and I mean, most herbs can handle some cool weather. I know Tom loves some cool weather, and we talked about cilantro earlier. But for using some sort of frost protection, you know, you've got the material that they sell at the store that's like a real thin, like cotton, fake spider web looking material.
Yeah.
That's what I think of when I see it. But a frost cloth that can just be laid across some sort of frame. So in a commercial setting, they'll actually put out, you know, metal or wood or plastic frames that go over the beds, and then they'll put the whole length of cloth across that bed. And it is important to have some sort of frame to help keep that cloth from laying on the plants themselves. You know, that material, that particular material, if it's cotton based or some sort of other fiber, is probably not going to hurt the plants if it's sitting on them as far as heat is concerned, or sunburn or frost burn is concerned, but it might just kind of lay on the plants and be a lot of weight on them. Like when we talk about protecting shrubs and small trees from frost, you know, as long as it's a fabric material that's laying on the leaves, it's not going to hurt them because they have much more support system. But if it is a clear plastic material or other plastic material, if it's touching any of those leaves, when that sunlight does come through, it is going to have a potential to burn. So generally we would recommend having some sort of frame to just keep that whatever material you're using from touching the crop itself.
Can I add a little something?
I guess, Mary. No. Go for it.
So what I do with my herbs is I have them in pots and, you know, close to my back door where I can easily access them. So if you have them in some pots, especially some of those that like to run and, you know, run all through your garden bed, like oregano or mint, then you can easily just bring them into a protected environment, into your house or into your garage.
Yeah,
when it gets really cold.
For sure. That's a great option for the tender herbs and vegetables that you might want to grow. Stick them in a pot, pull them inside when it's going to be super cold. Excellent idea. We've had a couple of Facebook folks ask for the title of the book that Mary referenced earlier. It's called Your Florida Guide to Perennials by Rick Schillhorn and Sydney Park Brown. Again, Your Florida Guide to Perennials. You can find that all over the place, but we recommend the IFAS bookstore for it. All right, thank you. Thanks, Mary, for that. And we're just going to stay with you, Mary, here. Lots of questions about how to clean up beds for the wintertime. Most common is it too late to use a systemic weed killer like Roundup? So can we go ahead and spray, kill, and then replant right behind that, or are we too late?
Well, you have to first understand how herbicides work, and especially Roundup. Well, when you're talking about Roundup, you're probably talking about the old active ingredient that is historically been in Roundup, and that's glyphosate.
Correct.
So how it works is it has to contact living green tissue in order for it then to be absorbed into that tissue, you know, the leaves or the stems, and then be translocated through the plant into the roots and everywhere in order to kill it. So if you spray something that is dormant, it's not actively growing, it's weak, it's sad, it's not doing well, it's not going to do a good job of absorbing that herbicide and translocating it. So as long as that whatever weed you're wanting to control, or grass or whatever it is, as long as it has healthy plant tissue, then you can use that. And I think we have a link that's going in the chat on using glyphosate and some other herbicide alternatives in your landscape beds.
Thanks for shedding some light on that topic. I know that's a controversial topic that people think a lot about. And that was a great answer, Mary. Matt, we've touched on ad nauseum on how to protect vegetables if we get low temperatures with you know, frost cloth and cold frames. So, but are there any other alternative methods that you could think of to protect plants from cold?
Okay. So, you know, those would be our recommended methods. Talk on throwing ice out. Now, my thought on that is the way they do with citrus, where they're going to spray a constant spray of water on the trees.
Okay.
And until, you know, those freezing temperatures rise up, you know, above 32, or just depending on the night, you know, it would depend if there was a lot of humidity versus a drier cold.
And what's the idea there?
So what happens there is you've got that water coming out at a rate that allows it to, it's freezing, but it's also constantly melting.
Okay.
As you know, you've got that first layer, got water coming out, and it's forcing that new ice to melt as it forms, or immediately after it forms. And what that does is releases heat, which sounds really strange because you do have ice as being cold, but ice isn't any colder than the outside air temperature. So by that ice melting, it's actually transferring heat into the canopy of that tree. And I would guess that would be the same thought process when it comes to those azaleas at Augusta. It's probably not going to work on some of your I'm not going to say more tender, but thinner leaved vegetables, because they're be susceptible to any cold weather.
Gotcha.
Did ask in the chat about weather indicators of frost versus hard freeze. So I put in a link to, and I didn't describe the link, but it's fawn.ifas.ufl.edu. So that's our Florida Automated Weather Network. And you can go there and you can zero in on the closest weather information for your area. So some people might have a tower a little closer to them than others, but you'll be able to see what the relative humidity is as compared to the air temperature. And anytime we've got a lot of wind and a drier cold, we're not going to run into frost nearly as often as with a more humid, stagnant, wet cold.
Gotcha. While we're on that topic, I've had some questions lately about, fruit trees and chilling hours. Just quickly, what's a chilling hour?
Okay. And it depends on what literature you look at, but
Okay.
It's calculated by hours in the 40s, at that range of temperature.
Okay.
And those accumulate over time. So I think it's like 42 degrees or something like that, 42 and below. Anyway, those hours that they keep track of, a lot of these, like the Fawn, will keep track of that, and other weather stations throughout the country. And depending on the fruit tree, depends on how many chilling hours it may require. And that's variety specific, usually with peaches or plums or apples. And they all need a certain accumulated number of chilling hours in order to produce a good crop. That doesn't mean they're not going to produce anything if they don't get those accumulation of hours. But anyway, that's something to look for on the tag of the different fruit trees that you buy. It should list it. If not, I would recommend looking it up in a book or on the internet before you make a purchase, because we want something that's going to work for us. Gotcha. Usually that would be around 500 or 600, 500 to 800.
Okay. Yeah. Somewhere in that range, yeah. All right, Larry, a veteran of many hurricane seasons, this question's perfect for you. So due to the storm, I assume we're talking about Hurricane Sally here, since that's our most recent. I've had to cut some Yopon holly bushes back. Should I do anything special to them or just hope for the best? So what do you think about that? And have you had that before in your yard?
Yeah, the good news is, in general, hollies are pretty cold hardy. They're pretty well adapted to cold weather, but the timing wasn't the best on if you're talking about severely cutting them back, because pruning severely forces new growth.
Okay.
And that young tender growth, going back to the timing, cut back in September, October, about 6 weeks, you should start seeing some new growth, at least new buds developing just inches below where you made the cuts. And then they'll start to elongate, and you've got real tender growth. So you just keep your fingers crossed. The good news is you're dealing with a plant that can deal with cold weather, but you may see, if we have an early killing frost or an early freeze, it's possible to see some of that new growth injured by the cold weather. If that happens, I think the plant's going to be okay.
Okay.
Wait until spring comes. That's the spring of 2021, after the danger of any cold weather, and clean up whatever was killed, that tender growth that was knocked back or killed by the cold weather. But the fact you're dealing with holly is a positive.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes hurricanes force our hands. You know, you don't want to sit there and look at a broken up plant for 6 months, so we go ahead and cut it back. But you're saying in this case, we'll probably be okay because it's a holly.
I think they will be. And it's a native plant as well. Okay.
It just like Larry, hollies are native here and, you know, are veterans of many hurricanes. They're adapted to it. So, thanks, Larry. That's awesome. Mary, you know, we've talked a lot about cool temperatures, and you talked about bringing containers in, so this is going to be perfect for you. This question from a Zoom listener: what is the lowest temperature that container citrus trees can take before we need to bring them inside? So I'm going to let you touch on that one.
Well, people do like to grow more and more citrus in containers. Well, growing a lot of things in containers. And you can do that. But when it comes to the cold weather, even varieties that are pretty tolerant of cold, like Satsuma and Kumquat and some others, they're not going to be as tolerant of cold when they're in a pot, because when they're in the ground, those roots are much more protected, and the roots are going to stay warmer because they're protected by all that soil. If you look at soil temperatures, even when we get freezing weather, you know, 15, 17 degrees, the soil temperature is not going to drop nearly as much. But if you have plants in the containers, those containers are going to get pretty cold, and those roots are going to get cold. So I would say, you know, anytime it looks like it's going to frost or freeze, you need to protect those pots. One thing that would be really good to have is put it on some kind of a platform that rolls, so that you can easily roll those, you know, into your garage or into your home, under a carport or whatever. And, you know, if it has to kind of stay outside, maybe wrapping something protective around that pot. Also think about protecting it from the northwest wind that would come and affect it. So you know, anything that is going to block direct wind will help.
So you might not necessarily think about it, but the plants in containers are, as you're saying, more cold sensitive than the plants in the ground.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, gotcha. I had never actually really thought about that. Very good. I'm learning something. I'm glad I didn't kick you out earlier. We're doing good. So Mary, while you're talking about while you're talking about lemons, Debbie Van Zant from Facebook asked, I planted a new lemon tree this year. When should I harvest lemons? They're already mostly yellow. So what are your thoughts on harvesting lemons?
Some of it depends on what variety you have. There's a lot of different varieties of lemons. So I would look up your variety. But generally, once they turn, you know, nice and yellow and they're, you know, a little bit soft, you know, they start, you know, becoming a little soft, it is generally when, you know, just kind of be patient, because it does take a while for citrus to ripen. You can also just try one, you know, just, you know, if you really think it's ripe, you know, cut off one and see what it's doing.
Gotcha. All right, Matt, Lollar, we're going to switch gears here from citrus to perennials. We have a Zoom question. Should I cut back all my perennials? So what are your thoughts on cutting things back in preparation for the winter?
I would generally lean towards just letting things deflate or
Yeah.
die down to the ground before I touch them. So I did find a nice article from Matt Orwatt regarding when to cut things back. And so most of our plant material, our perennial plant material that would die down in the winter, I would still wait until February or so to cut if I need to cut anything off of it.
Gotcha.
Yeah. The reason for that is they are perennials. So even though they might not have anything as top growth, everything, all their energy is stored in their root systems. If you cut them back too early, when they still have some living material on them, it's gonna keep those nutrients from going back into that root system and improving the health of that plant.
Okay, so we're gonna wait on that. Larry, we've gotten a couple. We're almost done with our Zoom questions. We've got a couple of Facebook questions that have come in. Andrea Light asked, should I mulch citrus trees for winter that are in the ground? So what are your thoughts on mulching citrus as kind of cold protection?
It's normally not recommended on citrus. You know, we do live in a part of Florida where we really can get cold. I live in Crestview, and I've had citrus in my landscape for years. Crestview is one of the coldest spots. We don't stay there, but when we bottom out, we normally get in the teens.
Yeah, when you watch the weather on the Panhandle weather map, Crestview is always the coldest. So.
We will almost every winter hit the teens. Thankfully we don't stay there, but with my citrus, and I have Satsuma, which is a cold hardy mandarin type, better during those really cold winter days and nights to have bare ground, because bare soil, if it's moist particularly, most of our fronts that come through, if you think about it, our cold fronts, there is a storm or rainy weather ahead of the cold weather. Occasionally we'll get a dry front. Well, that's not true. When we get that dry front, one of the things you can do early in the day, if they're forecasting a hard freeze, is to go out and water the soil, bare soil around those citrus trees so that they can pull in the heat from the sun during the day. At night, that heat then radiates or moves back up, it may not be, you know, it may mean several degrees warmer than as if you didn't do that. Mulching, on the other hand, holds in heat. If it's going to get really, really bark busting cold, then having mulch around the base of the plant and the roots may end up saving the graft and the roots. Worst case scenario, if you follow what I'm saying. Yeah. But with normal average weather, having bare soil on citrus is better than mulching.
Okay.
From a cold, you know, standpoint.
Gotcha. So unless we get, like you said, bark busting cold, you're better off with just bare ground. Okay.
Yes.
Thanks, Larry. So we had a question here. What bedding plants can I use that will give me the best impact as far as color and lasting blooms or reblooming in the cool season? And I'm just going to give this Zoom listener 5 of my favorites that I tend to grow every year in containers. And in no particular order, the 5 that I find myself growing year after year are violas, also called Johnny Jump Ups, a little relative of petunias. But I find them a lot easier to grow than petunias, and they continue to flower with much less care than petunia. Excuse me, not petunia, pansies. What am I saying? Violas are related to pansies and are much easier. Supertunias, that's a line by proven winners of petunia. I find those to be pretty easy to grow. Normal petunias are just not as tough. Supertunias, much tougher and can tolerate cooler weather. Lobularia, specifically one called Snow Princess. This is a variety of alyssum. So the little white balls of flowers, gorgeous plant in containers. There's a newer, they're not, I mean, not new plants, but newer in markets called Calabricoa or Calabrichoa. Excellent little petunia relative that does really well in the cool here. You'll see these marketed in the summer a lot, and they don't do well here in the warm weather. They do much better in the cool. So if you can find them in the fall and keep them alive through the winter, they'll do well for you. And then finally, our old favorite, the Snapdragons. You can't really go wrong with those. So my 5 favorite sort of bedding plants for the wintertime. Our final question from a Zoom listener, and then we're going to get to a couple in the chat before we get out of here. This is going to go to Mary Salinas. Mary, this is totally off topic from what we've done so far, but we're going to get to it because it's important. What should I do to remove poison safely? And what should I do in the fall, since we're in the fall? And we're assuming the person is talking about poison ivy. So what should they do?
Yeah, poison ivy is a tough plant. It is native, and a lot of our wildlife really like that, but of course we don't because it can cause so many problems. So to remove it safely, first off, you have to think about protecting yourself. You want to wear gloves that are not porous. That would be the best. I mean, any kind of gloves is good, but anything that is not porous would be best. If it is small, you can spray it with glyphosate or a stump killer sort of product that contains triclopyr. If it is pretty large, and around where I live, there's a lot of woods across the street, and there's a lot of poison ivy there that is really big and has really big woody vines growing up a lot of trees. And so if you're talking about something like that, you can, cut the vine and then treat that cut stump with a stump killer. And you want to, you want to treat the, use that stump killer full strength and treat that cut end, and also any bark that is still, coming up from the ground.
Okay.
You want to be sure too not to put it on your burn pile, because it will be toxic even when it's burning.
Oh, so the smoke can irritate you.
The smoke can irritate you, yes.
Yikes! So be careful with that if you decide to burn it. Get up.
Yes, and even when it has lost its leaves in the winter because it is deciduous,
Right.
Even those stems are very irritating and have the acids in it that can irritate your skin.
Okay. Very good. All right, folks, we're right here at 1 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and finish out. I apologize if we had to miss a couple of Facebook questions or folks' questions in the chat. If you missed us this time on a question, just ask next time. Thank you for tuning in to this Gardening in the Fall, and I believe we've got another Gardening in the Panhandle Live coming up for y'all in 2 weeks, and we're going to have actually a special guest that we have not had yet. Dr. Adam Dale is going to be here with a couple of our regulars to talk about plant pests and diseases. So if you're interested in pests and diseases and have had some problems, be sure to tune in right here 2 Thursdays from now, and you'll get to hear all about that from several experts in the field. Also, if you've not completed our survey, we have a survey here posted in the chat. UF Qualtrics right there from Julie McConnell at the bottom of the chat. Please fill that out. It really helps us, it helps guide our programming and lets us know how we're doing. And so for Mary, Larry, and our backstage producers, Julie, Pat, and Matt Orwatt, this is Daniel Leonard from Calhoun County Extension Office. I hope you have a great day. Thank you for joining us for Gardening in the Panhandle Live, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Bye.